The face you see in the mirror every morning is an elaborate lie, a fortress carefully constructed to protect you from the terrifying reality that you do not exist as a solid, singular entity. You spend your whole life building that me, layer by layer, only to realize in its darkest moments that you're suffocating inside it. There is a specific, silent horror in realizing that everything you call me, your tastes, your career, your moral stance, your social circle, is nothing more than a defensive reaction against the overwhelming pressure of being alive. You are not living. It's just holding a monument to a person who died long ago, a version of yourself that you created just to survive the expectations of others. Why is it that the moments when we feel most alive are often the ones when we lose control? Why do we crave the very thing that dissolves our boundaries? Passion, drunkenness, exhaustion, or even tragedy. It is because the burden of being somebody is becoming unbearable. You're tired of the performance. He is exhausted by the constant vigilance required to keep his persona intact. You know this truth deep in your stomach, but you avoid the gaze of your own reflection because acknowledging it would mean the total collapse of the world you have built. Are you afraid of getting lost? Or are you terrified by the idea that there was never anything to lose? The comfortable suffocation of the crowd. You walk into a room and immediately scan the perimeter, not for exits, but for clues on how to behave. Within seconds, you adjust your posture, your tone of voice, and even the complexity of your vocabulary to fit the collective frequency of the group. This is not social elegance. It is a survival mechanism that Otto Rank called the refuge of the middleman. By blending into the crowd, you escape the agonizing responsibility of being an individual. The crowd offers a hot, numbing anesthesia. If you're the same as everyone else, you can't be singled out, judged, or, most importantly, forced to confront your own mortality. You exchange your soul for the security of being invisible in plain sight. But what is the real price of this exchange? Every time you agree with a feeling you don't really feel, or laugh at an unfunny joke, a small part of your true will atrophies. You're essentially committing a suicide in slow motion, replacing your inner pulse with a social script. You feel a vague resentment for the people around you, but you can't explain exactly why. The truth is, you hate them because they're the reflection of your own cowardice. They are the witnesses of his disappearance. You feel safe, yes, but it's the security of the cemetery. How much of you are left after filtering through the expectations of your boss, your partner, and your digital audience? The trauma of birth, the first agony of separation. Rank proposed that his first experience with the world was not a miracle, but rather a violent catastrophe. The birth trauma is not just a physical event. It is the psychological model for all the fears you will have throughout your life. You were plucked from a state of perfect union, where there was no I and other, and thrown into a cold, terrifying world of limits and wants. From that moment on, his whole life has been a desperate and failed attempt to return to a state of oneness. That's why getting lost feels so good. It mimics the return to the womb. It promises the end of the exhausting work of being a separate and lonely entity. Every relationship you start, every ideology you cling to, is an attempt to heal that original wound. You look for a partner who completes you, but what you really want is for them to absorb you so that you no longer have to carry the weight of your own existence. You want to lose yourself in love because the found version of you is too painful to bear. Have you ever noticed how strange a relief you feel when an important decision is taken out of your hands? That relief is the trauma of birth talking. It is the desire to free oneself from the umbilical cord of one's own will. Why are you so eager to hand over the keys to your life to anyone who is willing to drive? Will as a weapon of self-destruction. Most people think of will as the power to get what you want, but Rank saw it as the power to be who you are. This creates a devastating paradox. To exercise one's will is to separate oneself from the herd, which triggers a paralyzing fear of isolation. But to suppress one's will is to die while still breathing. You get stuck in a pincer movement between the fear of life, which is the fear of being an individual, and the fear of death, which is the fear of losing that individuality. Most of you choose a partial death. You kill your desires, your creativity, and your truth so that you don't have to face the terror of being alone. Think about the last time you had a truly original thought or radical impulse. What happened to him? Chances are you choked it before it even reached your lips. You felt a surge of life followed immediately by a surge of guilt. This guilt is not a moral guilt. It is an existential guilt. It is the debt you owe to life that you refuse to live. You feel like a criminal for wanting to be yourself. That's why you feel so much tension in your shoulders, why you can't sleep at night despite physical exhaustion. Your repressed will is screaming inside a soundproof room. How long can you keep the door closed before the walls start to crack? The art of creating a false god. When we can't bear the weight of our own soul, we look for something or someone to idolize. We turn our careers, our children, or even our political affiliations into immortal projects. Rank argued that because we are terrified of our own insignificance, we try to cling to something that seems permanent. You work 80 hours a week for a company that would replace you in the blink of an eye, not because you love the job, but because the title gives you a sense of I that feels more solid than your real spirit. You are pouring your life energy into an idol in the hope that it will grant you eternal life in return. Notice your obsessions. Watch what you spend your money on and what you discuss online about. These are his neurotic attempts to escape the reality of his own decadence. You believe that if you can achieve this goal or buy this lifestyle, you will finally be real. But the goal always changes. The more you conquer, the emptier you feel, because you are building a temple on foundations of sand. You're not creating a life, it's creating a distraction. What would happen if all your titles and achievements were taken away from you tomorrow? Would there be one person left, or just a bunch of discarded fantasies? The obsession with approval as a slow poison. You are addicted to the look of the other. You check your notifications not for information, but to make sure it exists. If no one likes what you did you really do it? This is the ultimate trap of the modern ego. You've outsourced your sense of self to a jury of strangers who don't even know who they are. You live in a maze of mirrors, trying to style your hair in a reflection that is constantly changing. Rank noted that the need for approval is actually a fear of creative will. If you are approved, you are safe. So if he is criticized, he is exposed. This addiction turns you into a politician of your own life. You calculate each move based on how it will be perceived. You've become so good at playing the role of you that you've forgotten that it's an act. You feel a deep, distressing anxiety whenever you're alone, because without an audience, you don't know how to exist. The silence is deafening because there is no applause. You know this to be true, but you keep checking the screen, hoping for a dose of dopamine that tells you you're still here. If the world were silent tomorrow, would you still know who you are? The fear of life, the terror of possibility. We often talk about the fear of death, but Rank emphasized the fear of life. Life is unpredictable, chaotic, and requires a constant creative response. To truly live is to be in a state of perpetual flux. This is terrifying. Most people prefer the mortality of habit and routine because it offers the illusion of control. You stay in the stifling job, the stagnant relationship, or the boring city because known misery is safer than unknown joy. You're choosing a slow decay rather than a sudden bloom. You justify your stagnation with logic. He tells himself that he is being responsible or realistic. But behind this logic, there is pure terror. You are afraid of your own potential because potential demands action, and action carries the risk of failure and, more importantly, the risk of change. If you were to truly become who you could be, you would have to leave behind the person you currently are. And even if that person is unhappy, he is familiar to him. You cling to your chains because you've forgotten how to walk without them. What is the price of your security? The neurotic. As an unfree artist, Rank had a fascinating view of the neurotic, the person who suffers from anxiety, depression, or a sense of meaninglessness. He did not see them as sick in the traditional sense. He saw them as artists who had failed to create. Instead of channeling their creative will into a poem, a business, or a life, they turned that energy inward and used it to create symptoms. Your anxiety is literally your unused creativity rotting inside you. You're using your incredible imagination to visualize all the possible ways things could go wrong, rather than visualizing what you could build. You are a genius of self-torture. He built an elaborate internal prison with rules, punishments, and guards, all created by his own mind. This requires an immense amount of psychological energy. Imagine if you took the energy you spend worrying about what people think and redirected it to your true expression. But you won't do that, because being the artist of your own life means taking full responsibility for the results. It is easier to be a victim of a disorder than to be the architect of one's own destiny. Are you really broke, or just refuse to build? The seduction of loss of identity. This brings us to why getting lost feels so good. The pressure to be an individual, to exercise the will, to create, to face the fear of life, is unbearable. So we seek experiences that dissolve the ego. We join cults, get lost in extremist politics, succumb to addictions, or plunge into toxic relationships where we can merge with the other. In those moments, the I disappears. Anxiety ceases. The guilt disappears. It is a temporary and pleasurable death. You feel a euphoria because the burden of your identity has finally been lightened. But this is an illusory peace. It is the peace of emptiness. You are not transcending your ego. It's just hiding from him. When the effect of the substances wears off, or the relationship ends, or people disperse, you are left with a self that is even more fragile and depleted than before. You spent your life energy on a temporary escape, and now the bill has arrived. You realize that you can't run away from yourself forever, because wherever you go, there you are, waiting in the shadows, bitter and neglected. Why does emptiness seem more attractive to you than sunlight? The courage to be imperfectly real. The solution is not to find yourself. That's another cliché. The I is not a hidden treasure. It is an ongoing act of creation. Rank believed that the only way out of the neurotic trap is to accept one's own will to be. This means accepting that you will be misunderstood, that you will be alone at times, and that you are fundamentally responsible for the meaning of your life. It means to stop looking for a cure and start the work of creation. You need to be willing to be a bad version of yourself before you can be a true version. Most of you are waiting for permission that will never come. They are expecting to feel ready or confident. But trust is a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite for it. It is necessary to act even when you are still shaking. You have to speak even with a trembling voice. True identity lies in the friction between your inner truth and the outer world. It is not a polished statue. It is a marked organism which breathes and transforms. Can you handle the complexity of being a real human being? Or do you prefer the perfect lines of a mannequin? The truth you're avoiding, the ultimate truth, is that you're going to die, and you have no idea when. All of his efforts to build a persona, to gain approval, and to avoid risk are just ways of trying to bargain with death. You think that if you play the game correctly, you will be spared the tragedy of existence. But the game is rigged. The only thing you really own is this moment and your ability to choose what to do with it. Every second you spend being someone else is a second of your life that you threw in the trash. You know that. You feel it in those quiet moments before bed, or when you're driving alone on the highway. You feel your true self pulsing inside your ribcage, begging for air. And yet tomorrow morning, you'll put the mask back on. You will check the notifications. You'll say the right things. You will continue to get lost because it is easier than the alternative. But ask yourself, in the end, who will die? Will it be you, or will it be the character you played for a world that didn't even care? There is no magical epiphany that will come to save you. There is no book, video, or person who can give you a soul. You're on the edge of a precipice, staring at the wreckage of the identity you've spent years perfecting. And you realize that it was all a complex way of saying no to life. The discomfort you feel now is not a glitch in the system. It's the system trying to wake you up. You can choose to go back to sleep, sink into the warm, numbing embrace of the collective, and disappear into the safety of being a nobody. Or you can accept the terrifying, lonely, beautiful burden of being an individual. But remember, every day you pretend to be who they want you to be, you are paying for your survival with your life. You've lost yourself for so long that you've begun to appreciate the feeling of being absent. The question is there still enough of you left to go back?